Hello, thanks for joining me. Today we're looking at the grade 6 B3 piece, Last Song, by Alexis Ffrench. This guy writes some very nice piano pieces, and I'm sure he's possibly written some other music as well that I've not heard, but what I have heard of Alexis Ffrench's music I've really enjoyed. So he's a great person to search online for, and you might discover some other pieces that he's written that are also very nice. Right, here we go then. I'm going to play this for you. It's a very relaxed type of song or piece, and the tempo at the beginning is marked at 80. So it's just kind of going along that type of tempo. Okay, so we'll break it down afterwards and talk about it as usual. Here we go then. Let's have a listen to it. So then, let's go back to the beginning. If we look at the right hand part, we have a very legato line here. All of that needs to be played legato, and in fact the left hand similarly, which is very stretchy. So if you've got small hands, this might be a very challenging piece to play. Do keep these things in mind when you're trying to decide what piece do I pick to play for these grades, because although you might like the sound of the piece, if you really struggle with stretches, this could actually be a very difficult piece to actually play. We've got some very high left hand notes as well. So we're going to the F sharp and crossing over to the G sharp. Pedalling as well, con ped with pedal. So each bar generally is being pedalled, creating that nice sort of layered sound. So a good approach to start with might be just learn the left hand part and play it very nicely and musically. It would be a good idea to actually practice without pedal a few times, just to make sure you can play it quite legato to begin with. Just because you're pedaling, it doesn't give you an excuse to not play it legato physically. You know, you should really try and connect the notes if you can. You know, if you can't quite stretch, then you will have to use the pedal just to help you get to those notes. And this next bit. Then have to lift off, of course, for this last bit. You'll notice in bar 3 there's a 1/4 fingering in the left hand, which seems slightly counterproductive because you've got to get the 5 on the A. I don't think I did that when I played it a minute ago. You could do 1/4 as it says, and then drop onto the 5. It's not that easy to do. I think the thinking there is just to keep it legato. But if you do the 5 on G sharp, you can still bounce on there. It might not be quite as stable, but it seems to work well. So be careful when you first start learning this piece that you're really focusing on the left hand and making sure that that's really secure. That's underpinning everything. So similarly, going from bar 5, again, not pedalling, just and then you can start to pedal. In bar 5, you'll probably pedal twice in the bar, but for the first half, and then the next bit, and of course this bit, and of course. So you end up just with this nicely sustained effect without making it too blurry. If you're at grade 6 level now, you'll probably know that generally when you pedal, the pedalling is governed by usually what the chord progression is and what the left-hand parts are doing. Looking at the right-hand part, we've already established that this is very smooth. So all of this can be played, you know, smoothly without pedalling, just to test. Does everything sound smooth? If that's the case, then we put the pedal in. One other thought about this, generally speaking, is when you're learning it, this is melody of accompaniment. So the tune is playing in the right hand. We don't want the left hand to be too loud. If you play it like this, you know, even though it says MP, it's very easy for the left hand to creep up in volume. It's a bit heavy-handed. It's got to be very tender. So try to think of the left-hand part as, you know, really, really light and supportive. Okay, so I don't need to say much else about page 1 really, because the approach to this will be the same all the way through this. You're bringing out the melody and really trying to learn these left-hand parts as smooth as possible. When we get to page 2, we've got that, which always reminds me of the Disney film Hercules. If any of you have seen that, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Can't remember the name of the piece. Go the Distance, I think it's called actually. But anyway, this idea here, we're pedal pumping each of those chords. Pedal there, and just to get a nice smooth sound. Same again on bar 18. And then we're back to the same sort of deal as page 1, you know. We're just trying to play the left hand nice and smooth and keeping everything as legato as possible. Dynamic wise, we've stayed reasonably soft throughout page 1. And you know, maybe there's moments where you can feel like putting in a crescendo and dropping a bit. Trust your musicality on this. You don't have to feel completely locked in by the limited dynamic marking there. Similarly, with tempo, you might want to stretch the time occasionally on a phrase, rubato. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. In bar 23 and bar 24, we're about to go into a key change. So this is an example of where I might stretch the timing a little bit. It doesn't tell us to slow down there, but it would add a little sort of extra bit of colour to the sound and actually make it a bit easier to transition. Anyway, enough talking. Let's play it. Bar 23, 24 and 25. In fact, to give you context, I'll go from bar 21. Oops. Feel I'm making that broader, I'm stretching it out a little bit. You don't have to really overdo it, but little moments like that can work well. So if you play back what I played earlier in the video, there might be a few moments where I was kind of playing around with the timing a bit. That's the term rubato for sort of stretching the timing. Okay, so we've gone away from the key of E major into F major now at bar 25. So really, you know, work up to maybe the bottom of page 1 initially. Get that really locked in. Don't get too obsessed in the first few weeks of learning this with having to play the whole thing. You know, you could just work on the first page, get really comfortable with that. In fact, you could even break it into 2-bar chunks, you know, so your opening line, you know, Make sure you got that down. And then this slightly trickier. That's a little bit awkward, all those sixths. Do keep an eye on fingering as well, because those numbers are very useful when working through this stuff. So yeah, compartmentalise this then. Page 1, we get to that second section really at the top of page 2. It's really a continuation of the first page. It sounds different. So that could be a self-contained little area to practice those 8 bars. And then once you feel ready, you know, we can look at bar 25 onwards to the end. So as we go into bar 25, the left-hand part there, F, C, and G and A, which for some of you might be very hard to play at the same time, because it's bigger than an octave. Even if we didn't have the G, we've got the A. If you can't play that, you might have to settle for just playing the F and the C. Or you might be able to do like a very quick roll, like that. If you do something quick though, you've got to stay loose. You mustn't get tense. So you've got to practice it slow. So it's got a bit of calmness. And then if you pedal, hear that sound? That could still work. That can get you out of trouble if you're struggling to play this chord as written. So that's the first thing I notice about bar 25, is that left hand there. You also need to practice from bar 24 going into that, because that previous chord at the end of bar 24, C and B flat, rolled, you've then got to go. This is another reason why slowing down at the end of bar 24 is a good idea. So I just practice that without pedaling and get that locked in. From this point onwards then, you know, it's still the same deal as page 1. You're playing everything smooth. The bar 26. And then bar 27. Obviously you will have to lift your hand off here and there, but once the pedal is down, we have that nice glossy smooth sound. Just keep an eye out for where the bass notes actually change, because that's when your pedaling will change. So for example in bar 28, that can be held for most of the bar, but in bar 29, and then a new pedal here, and of course followed by a new one here, and then that will all tie in. I don't have much else to say on it then really. I think you've got the idea of what's going on. As we get towards the end, we could put in a slight slowing down. There is no other dynamic here. After we get to bar 25, it's forte. So there's not necessarily a reason to get quieter at the end. You know, maybe you would slightly play it quieter, but I think as long as you play it musically, that's the key thing here. So for example, if I go from bar 32, which is still obviously fairly loud, did you notice I slightly stretched the time there as well on that bar? Just gives it a little bit more looseness. For me, the slight dropping in volume seems quite nice as an effect, but experiment, you know, just try it out however you think you want to hear it, and if it sounds good, then it probably is good. Okay then, so hope that's been a useful tutorial for you today. Thanks for watching, and please catch up again as I go through the C lists if you're interested in that. Okay, take care then.